Welcome back to another edition of the Schmidt Show here on News Radio 1029 KARN. I am your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. 501-403-KARN is the phone number, 501-403-5276. I was going to take a drink of my coffee there and realized you can't drink coffee and talk at the same time. So, it's it's already one of those days. We've had a busy day today here already on the Schmidt Show at KARN. My friend Richard and I recording a few more podcasts episodes for the Arkansas 15-minute podcast. So this week airing tomorrow. Friday. Good grief. Yeah, Friday. It'll air Friday. It is it's the wrap up. We've done 5 episodes now of this season of the podcast on the Boys on the Tracks. And we originally planned 3. We would do 3. We would do kind of a one, intro, one about the case files that both him and, Kelly Martin, who was on the podcast last week, and, one episode kind of to wrap up the story. And it developed into, we're now going to be finishing up a wrap-up episode 6 of 3. This week. So that's Friday morning. And then next week, we've got a story that ties North Dakota and Arkansas together. So you'll definitely want to tune in for that too. The story of Gordon Call. He was a posse comitatus, cop murdering kind of a dirtbag generally, and he started out in North Dakota and ended in Arkansas. So we're going to tie the two together and share that story in a couple of weeks. So make sure you download that episode as well. And if you want to do that, it's on our website, newsradio1029.com. Just go to the on-demand page and scroll down a little ways. You'll find the Arkansas 15-minute podcast. That's what we've already been working on today. We've also got a lot to talk about on the show today. A few stories. Yesterday we mentioned that Stormy Daniels testified in the Donald Trump non-disclosure agreement case, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. We didn't get to it yesterday. We just ran out of time. But I'm going to be honest. It was surprisingly serious to hear Stormy Daniels' testimony. Now, she was pretty hardcore. I think at one point she even admitted on the stand that she hated Donald Trump or something like that. So I don't know that her testimony can be taken entirely serious, but her approach or her response or testimony or whatever was a lot more serious and a lot less clown show than I expected it to be. And so we'll get into that, but I want to also tie together with that the documents case, the top secret documents case that the judge there, Eileen, I can't think of her last name now, Judge whatever her name was, Eileen Cannon. She has said that the case is basically going to be delayed indefinitely, and that it wouldn't be prudent at this point to schedule another date because there's so many pre-trial motions and things like that have been filed and things that they've got to deal with from a kind of a procedural standpoint, that she said it wouldn't be prudent to bother scheduling a date now because we don't know how those things are going to play out. And it's likely won't be a trial until after the election. So we'll get into that, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on some of this stuff because I feel like the left may have overplayed their hands on these cases. They may have played their cards a little bit too soon. I think what they were expecting was that all of these court cases, all of these attacks on him with some lawfare would be the thing that drove him out of the primaries, that would get him to drop out or fade away before he ever got started. And I think they just overplayed that hand, and I think they misunderstood Donald Trump's willingness to fight this fight. And so I think they expected him to drop out. I think they expected him to do like most every other Republican for the last 40 or 50 years has done at the sight of any sort of accusation, cower and hide and run away. In fact, Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this quite a bit. He's had this phrase that he used where he said, it doesn't matter the guilt or innocence, it matters only what the seriousness of the charge is. Because for decades, the media would simply accuse or make an allegation about someone. Oh, this person said this thing, so they must be racist, or this person did this thing, so they must be, a murderer or an embezzler, a robber, or, whatever they would accuse them of, knowing that the Republicans would simply cower and hide and, I don't want to be a distraction. These things are patently untrue, but, in the interest of what's best for the party, I'm going to withdraw my nomination. I'm going to resign my position. I'm going to whatever, because all that mattered was what they were accused of, because the media knew that they would make the grandiose accusation, and that's all people would hear, because that would be the headline. And when there was no trial, when there was no actual investigation because the individual who was accused of whatever simply resigned or whatever, they knew that they would never have to back up the claim. They would never have to actually go through the investigative process to determine guilt or innocence. And I think they expected the same thing of Donald Trump. I think they expected Donald Trump to simply kowtow and cower and hide and run away like every other Republican has ever done. And I think they as George W. Bush would say, underestimated Donald Trump's willingness to actually fight the fight and to hire the attorneys and spend the money that it takes to fight these cases. And I think it may have backfired on him. And so we'll get into that because I think that's part of the discussion here as well. Another thing I want to talk about, there's been a lot of discussion about the Learns Act lately and everybody trying to get to get the Learns Act repealed and get the signatures and the petition and all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions I want to ask is, can education exist and prosper without government schools at all? Is the government being involved in education even necessary? I think we have this misplaced belief that if the government wouldn't force us, we wouldn't do it. That if the government wouldn't force us to send our children to school, if the government wouldn't force us to fund government-run schools and all those things, that we simply wouldn't do it. That if the government schools didn't exist, everybody would be stupid and there would be no education. No one would learn anything. No one would experiment and try new things and develop new products or new technologies. None of that would happen unless the government forces us and the government uses the threat of force to make us go to school, to college and things like that. And I'm just not sure that's true. I mean, the government doesn't force us to do a lot of things, but we do them anyway because we instinctively recognize the benefit to us. The government doesn't force me to get out of bed and come to work every day. In fact, really, if we're honest, the government incentivizes a lot of people at a lot of different levels to not go to work, to not be productive members of the society. So there's all sorts of things that requires absolutely no force or coercion at all, yet we all kind of instinctively do those things because we recognize their benefit to us. I read a lot. I do a lot of research on a lot of different topics. I study all sorts of different things. I'm fascinated by space. I'm fascinated by history, and I pursue those things because I find them interesting. And nobody forces me to do that. So I'm beginning to wonder, is government involvement in school actually harming education generally. So we'll get into that as we continue with the Schmidt Show. That and a whole lot more. But for now, that's what you ought to know. And those of you watching us on video over on Twitter, or on our website, or on our YouTube channel, you're going to have to join us on the regular broadcast, and we will do that in just a few moments on News Radio 102.9 KARN.